Hello everyone and welcome to Gyandoot 2.0 program, an initiative of Commissionerate College Education Rajasthan. Friends, today we shall discuss a very famous short story written by Ernest Hemingway, Old Man at the Bridge. I am Bharti Singh Arya, Assistant Professor in the Department of English. So let us read about the author. Ernest Miller Hemingway was born in Oak Park, Illinois in USA in 1899. He was an American novelist, short story writer, journalist, and a sportsman. He started his writing career as a reporter for the Kansas City Star newspaper. During his life as a soldier and correspondent, Hemingway wrote about the war, novels, and short stories. He worked in different countries around the world. In Italy during the First World War, he worked as an ambulance driver. Then he worked in China in the Japanese invasion, England, World War II, and Spain, the Spanish Civil War. Hemingway's economical and understated style, which he termed the iceberg theory, had a strong influence on the 20th century fiction. While his adventurous lifestyle and his public image brought him admiration from later generations, he produced most of his work between the mid-1920s and the mid-1950s, and he was awarded the very famous Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954. Many of his works are considered as classics of American literature. His wartime experiences formed the basis for his novel A Farewell to Arms, which was written in 1929. But unfortunately, he died by committing suicide in 1961. Let us see the setting of the story. Old Man at the Bridge is set in a war zone at the pontoon bridge across the Ebro River during the Spanish Civil War in 1938. It is the time of Easter Sunday. Now, a pontoon bridge is a flat-bottomed boat or portable float which is used in building a floating temporary bridge. In this story, the bridge is placed in Spain, which is connected to Ebro Delta, and also with safer places like Barcelona. Here, the bridge means the step from war to the time of peace. Because it is temporary, people must hurry up to pass it. Let us look at the plot summary of the story. The story Old Man at the Bridge is related through a conversation between a soldier and an old man who had to leave his hometown during the Spanish Civil War. Here, the author talks about the horrors of war. During the war, there was panic and anxiety all around. Everyone was aware of the impending death. An old man with spectacles had walked 12 kilometers from his hometown. He sat exhausted by the side of a road near a pontoon bridge that crossed a river. There were carts, trucks, and men, women, and children who were crossing the bridge. Peasants, refugees, and Republican soldiers laden with munitions and supplies fled the advancing fascist army. The narrator, who said that his mission was to cross the bridge and find out how far the enemy has arrived, he was doing his work. He saw the old man sitting beside the bridge when he crossed towards the enemy. He found him still sitting there when he crossed back. He began talking to the old man and came to know that his hometown was San Carlos. He was the last person to leave the town, as he was anxious about his animals. The narrator, who was nervously awaiting the advent of the fascist army and the ensuing battle between the armies, asked the old man about his animals. The old man said that he had the charge of 2 goats, a cat, and 4 pairs of pigeons. He said that a captain had told him to leave the town and the animals because of artillery fire. He also told the narrator that he had no family and no politics. He then expressed concern about what would happen to the animals. He said that the cat would be all right because cats could look after themselves. But he did not know what would happen to the other animals. The narrator, who was more concerned for the old man's safety than those of the animals, inquired what the old man's politics was. The old man replied that he had none. He told the narrator that he was an old man of 76 and had walked 12 kilometers. He was extremely tired to go any farther. The narrator told him to walk up to the road and catch a ride on the truck to Barcelona and move on to a safer place. The old man thanked him, but he continued to express his concern over the fate of the animals he had left behind, as the animals were his family. The narrator reassured him, saying the animals would be fine. The narrator told him that the pigeons would fly away, but the old man continued to worry about the goats. He also told him that it was better not to think about them and that he should get up and walk to the trucks and leave that place, as it was dangerous to stay there. He thanked the man and got to his feet. He swayed from side to side and then sat down backwards in the dust. He reflected his obsession about the fate of his animals when he remarked that he was only taking care of animals. The narrator felt pity for the old man and said that there was nothing to do about him. He thought that the old man's only luck was that cats could look after themselves and that the, the day was overcast and so the fascists were unable to launch their planes that day. Let us have a look at the theme of the story. The story Old Man at the Bridge deals with various themes like life, death, and war. Here, the narrator, who is a soldier in the Spanish Civil War, tries to convince an old man sitting on the side of the road to get himself to safety before the fighting begins. While the narrator clearly worries about the old man's safety and that he will die if he stays there, the old man isn't worried about himself at all. He worries about his animals, which he has left behind before fleeing his hometown. Both the old man and the narrator are concerned with the survival of others. The old man about the animals, and the narrator about the old man. However, we see for both men, this concern is futile. After all, the animals have been abandoned. And the narrator walks away from the old man at the end of the story because he says that there was nothing to do about him. In this way, Hemingway shows the horrors of war without even depicting any bloodshed. War takes lives ravenously and senselessly. Even those not directly involved in the fighting, and it leaves people devaluing life, unable to perform even the simplest acts of salvation. Hemingway is clear that the war, while still somewhat distant, is ominously approaching, making it clear that the violence of war has not yet arrived, but it is coming, so the atmosphere is one of anxiety and dread. And if we see at the old man, the cost of war is not simply his life, since by the time of the story begins, the war has already taken what matters most to him, his animals. When the old man tells the narrator the name of his hometown, it gave him pleasure to mention it, and he smiled. This is the only time that the story depicts a positive emotion. So we see the love for one's native place, the love for one's family. It is associated with the memory of the town the old man has fled. Therefore, even this small moment of happiness is merely an indication of what the man has lost. Furthermore, when he fled his hometown, the old man had to leave behind the animals for which he had been caring: two goats, a cat, and four pairs of pigeons. It's clear that this duty was important to him because he was the last one to leave, which shows his reluctance to leave once the town was evacuated. The danger his animals are in torments him, and he worries about them more than he worries about his own life, which is endangered by the decision to sit by the road instead of fleeing. To him, though, the weight of what he has lost seems more important than what he might lose, his own life, by remaining by the bridge. Even though the narrator is earnestly trying to get the man to move, he is not relating to him as a person, which is perhaps why he gives up on the man quickly, stating that there was nothing to do about him. Another theme which Hemingway deals in the story is alienation. The title character of Old Man at the Bridge has no family, no politics, and nowhere to go. The violence of the Spanish Civil War has forced the old man to flee his hometown and his beloved animals, which are seemingly the only source of joy for him. He sits by the side of the road while others flee, apparently resigned to dying there when the violence arrives. The story implies that it's the man's alienation that has drained him of the will to live. After all, he has no political stake in the conflict, nobody who can take him in, and he cannot return to his animals, which seem to be his only responsibility and connection to others. We also see that the narrator, who treats him with some detachment, fails to make a difference. In this way, Hemingway shows that war alienates people from the connections that are meaningful to them, and the man's presumed death suggests that alienated life is perhaps not worth living at all. Throughout the story, Hemingway illustrates how alienated the old man is from other people. This is apparent from the very beginning, as the old man is the only person left behind by the crowds of people crossing the river to safety. No one of whom concerned themselves with this exhausted and feeble man. When the soldier asks the old man about whether he has family, the old man responds that he has only the animals that he left behind. Finally, when the narrator suggests that the old man catch a truck for Barcelona. The old man points that he knows no one in that direction, which suggests that human connection is important to him, but it is lacking. In order to motivate himself to flee to safety, he has to be going towards somewhere familiar and someone familiar. But he seems to have nobody except the narrator himself right now, who is himself a distracted stranger with his own problems to attend. In addition to his alienation from the other people, the old man has no politics, which means that he has no allegiance to the others in the war. He has no stake in the violence that has displaced him. The rest of the civilian evacuees may also not have any political leanings as well. Then, another theme here that is discussed is religion and morality. The story is a wartime story set on Easter Sunday, which is full of implicit and explicit references to Christianity. However, none of the story's characters seem to have faith in God or practice Christian morality. And all the Christian references wind up corrupted. Let us look at it. The doves that symbolize peace and hope have an uncertain fate. The old man evokes the good shepherd, but he fails to care for his flock. And the narrator at first seems like he could be a good Samaritan, but he does not put in his best efforts to save the old man's life. By showing the breakdown of religious meaning, both symbolically and in people's everyday lives, Hemingway highlights that war drives people to immorality and inhumanity. The story has explicit references to Christianity in the form of the narrator's casual mention at the story's conclusion that these events take place on Easter Sunday. And this is perhaps Hemingway's most profound twisting of Christian imagery. Easter is the day on which Jesus rose from the dead following his crucifixion at the hands of his enemies. And the day embodies the miraculous possibility of salvation for mankind. And Hemingway writes that it was Easter Sunday and the fascists were advancing towards their grove. Despite the Christian fate, the fascists have not paused their violent campaign. This associates them with the bloodshed of Christ's enemies and perhaps suggests that their faith is hollow. Therefore, Hemingway depicts religion as impotent and hollow in the face of war. Let us discuss the symbols that are used in the story Old Men at the Bridge. The symbol of the old man. The old man symbolizes war's destructive impact on all innocent lives of people and animals who are displaced by the horrific realities of war that they do not understand. Another symbol is the cat. Cats are often associated of having 9 lives, and therefore a cat is seen as the survivor. A cat can fend or take care of itself. The old man need not worry about his cat. Then there are pigeons and doves mentioned in the story. They are the birds that can fly to a safer place and escape the war. Dove is associated with peace and hope. The old man need not worry about the pigeons or doves as they can fly to a safer place. Then there are goats. Goat symbolizes helplessness, the one that cannot escape. The old man is worried about his goats because goats cannot take care of themselves. The old man himself is a goat figure here because he is one of those innocent victims who are sacrificed to the war like a goat, that is a sacrificial animal. Then there is mention of Easter Sunday, the day of celebration of the resurrection, a time of rebirth and renewal. Whereas for the old man and his animals, it is an ironic contrast because it is time of inevitable death. There is repetition of the old man's words, I was only taking care of animals. This again is symbolic expression of all those voiceless, innocent men, women, and children who are victims of war. Then, an important symbol is bridge, that final bridge between life and death. Let us see the critical appreciation. The short story Old Man at the Bridge is related through a conversation between a soldier and an old man who had to leave his hometown during the Spanish Civil War. The conversation takes place at the bridge where the soldier is performing his duty. The story conveys the problems faced by the people as victims of war in the form of a dialogue. The conversation advances the story further and takes to its logical conclusion. The theme of the story and the characteristic traits of the two characters who are involved in the conversation are revealed through this conversation. Then the story is narrated in the first person. Hemingway has used the first person narrative technique, and narrator is a nameless soldier whose duty is to observe the advancing of the enemy. The soldier has captured the atmosphere of war and the helplessness of the people as victims of war in his conversation with the old man, who was forced to leave his hometown and his animals behind. He has explored the region and the situation by suggestive hints. The first person narrative helps the reader to identify with the scene of threat and helplessness and the horrors of war. Then there are different metaphors and symbols used in the story. It abounds in metaphors and symbols. One of the symbols is the bridge, which represents uncertainty and dangers, and the bridge between life and death. The pigeons symbolize peace and harmony and the fact that they fly away from the war. It may be a reference to the refugees who flee from the war to safer places, longing for peace. The cat is a symbol of independence, who does not need anybody to survive. The goat is often used as a sacrificial animal, and this probably represents the old man who reconciles himself with his impending death. The language used in the story is narrated in a conversational form, as we have seen, and the language used is very simple. But several simple words are symbolic in significance. The style is lucid and intelligible. The dialogue between the soldier and the old man takes the story forward. The simple conversation reveals the characteristic traits of the speakers and reflects the theme of the story. After we have discussed the short story, Old Man at the Bridge, you must try to attempt the following questions. What is the theme of the story, Old Man at the Bridge? What is the significance of Easter Sunday? Who are the family of the old man? What does the bridge symbolize? I hope you will be able to answer these questions after going through the video. Thank you.